Welcome to NIME 2021, New Interfaces for Musical Expression. I'm Margaret Minsky from the NYU Shanghai Interactive Media Arts Program. I'd like to introduce Gus Xia from the Computer Science Program. We're the co-chairs of the NIME 2021 conference. Today, we are fortunate to have a conference day that joins our NIME community here on campus with the NIME community worldwide. This morning we will begin with our conference keynote, and then we'll hear from the speakers in our first spotlight session. It's my particular pleasure to introduce AnnMarie Thomas. She'll be giving a talk today entitled Plays Well with Others. Professor Thomas graduated from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, with a major degree in engineering and a minor in music. She went on to complete her doctorate in mechanical engineering at Caltech, and is now a professor at the University of St. Thomas in three things: the Faculty of Engineering, the Faculty of Business, and the Faculty of Engineering Education. Just to touch on the sweep of her projects, she's the co-creator of Squishy Circuits, and that's a kit for sculpting electronic circuits. She's the author of the book Making Makers, and she's the executive director of the OK Go Sandbox project. It's a collaboration between her lab, and the Grammy Award-winning rock band OK Go. As the founding director of the Playful Learning Lab, she's forging new alliances, including a long-term residency with the Minnesota Children's Museum, and a partnership with the Minnesota State Academy for the Deaf, developing art and technology programming for deaf children. When I met AnnMarie a few years ago, I learned that she herself is an avid amateur aerialist. She specializes in trapeze. And AnnMarie has led projects that bring her students together with circus performers to study the physics of circus arts and to create new interfaces for performance. I am thrilled that she's agreed to talk with us at NIME about what it means to be playful in the engineering context, how that relates to sound and music, and to tell us about her team's work at the Playful Learning Laboratory. I give you AnnMarie Thomas.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Margaret, and hello to all of you. I'm so excited to see an audience in person. This is my first time speaking to a room full of people in like 15 months. And hello to everyone else watching online. I'm joining you in the Zoom space here. Thank you all so much for having me. I have long been a fan of the papers and the work at NIME, and celebrate with my students when they get papers accepted to present. This year especially, though, seeing the theme of learning to play and playing to learn is obviously one near and dear to my heart. If at any point you have questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A app in Zoom, and I know that we'll also be chatting at the end. I would love for this to be a bit interactive. And so let me start with the title, as Margaret mentioned, for today is Plays Well with Others. And often this is something that you may hear or see, hopefully, on a kid's report card in the US, that the child collaborates well, plays well with others. And it seems like such a simple comment. But the more I've been thinking about this concept of play, well, first of all, what is play? And then what does it mean to play well? Right? We have to look at the whole assessment of things, and particularly in a school situation. And then this aspect of with others. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I want to show you some samples of particularly the music and sound focused work that my awesome students have done, and talk a bit about how we in our lab define play. So again, as Margaret mentioned, I'm at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, and I get to work with some pretty amazing students. And so again, every piece of work I show you today is here but for the grace of these amazing undergraduates. I actually don't have any graduate students. All of the work that you'll see is done by undergraduates from 15 different majors, ranging from education to music composition to creative writing to finance. And the lab is entirely run by these young adults. So how did I get here? Well, I will start by saying that I was the kid who always loved art and music and theater and went to a high school where I took fine arts every year, painting and music composition and performance, and took all the math and science classes sort of for fun on the side. And this is actually the first sentence of my college application to MIT, which is, I want to go to MIT because I've always wanted to be an actress. MIT isn't really known for their theater program, but what I realized as a young student in high school was that when I was acting, someone told me what to say and where to stand and what to wear. And that when I was tinkering in an engineering lab, I actually felt like I was in a fine arts class. I was being creative. So I decided to go off to MIT, where I did study ocean engineering, and then went off and did my PhD in robotics. This thing on the right is a synthetic jet propulsor, and I only share it in this talk at NIME because it's actually an underwater propulsion system that is built, if you look closely, on a voice coil, actually from commercial speakers. I did minor in music composition at MIT, but I kind of left the music world for a bit. Except during graduate school, I was sort of illicitly sneaking off at night to Art Center College of Design, first as a student, and then where I joined the faculty. And I had the opportunity in 2004 to work with the sound artist Steve Roden in Los Angeles and a geographer to create a piece called Earth that took the data from the Hector Mine earthquake and turned it into a player piano musical score that was played on this 32-foot by 16-foot by 8-foot long wooden sculpture on children's xylophones. And so I loved this work, but it kind of went away for a while. I moved to Minnesota, where I took my professorship at UST. And I've had many people send me this cartoon, so I have to share it with you because I think it does sum up a lot of what we'll be talking about today. If you're having trouble reading it, it shows some people throwing pendulums at each other, and it says, this is an interdisciplinary program in which physics students try to hit psychology students with pendulums. And the caption says, my professors had an ongoing competition to get the weirdest thing taken seriously under the label interdisciplinary program. And I'm pretty proud at this point in my career. I think I would do really well in that competition because while I would never argue that I am an expert at anything, I've gotten to play in a lot of different sandboxes. And one of my favorite things is finding how we can take these seemingly different fields and merge them together. I don't know if you guys are hearing that feedback. Ah, there we go. I was getting some feedback. So this is what life looked like in Minnesota, teaching different classes until the fall of about 2009, when I realized I had to teach a dynamics class over the January, 4 weeks, every day for multiple hours. And I wanted to come up with a way that the students would find this fun, this intensive class on the study of forces in motion. And as Margaret mentioned in the introduction, my hobby is circus arts and flying trapeze, which is really all physics. So as a young professor, I decided there had to be a way that we could take the normal physics and engineering lab and take it to the circus. And since we're discussing music a lot here, I want to show you the class highlights video for this class, which was really the birth of the Playful Learning Lab. And I will call attention to the soundtrack, which was actually done by a local band using the course's notes. So the lyrics are scientifically accurate for the most part.
I think gravity's got me. I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go. All these restraints and requirements, rigid bodies won't deform till spent. All these things I've said, you know they're true. Am I spinning or is it you? I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go. I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go. like a rocket potential energy. Quickly converts to kinetic me. Star-crossed products meet in reference frames. Harmonic motion gain. I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go. I think gravity's got me. Oh no, please don't let go.
Oh no.
Oh no, please don't let go.
So if you've taken a dynamics or physics class, a lot of that probably looked familiar, right? Typically we'd swing a pendulum. In this case, we put sensors on the students and swung them in the flying trapeze. And instead of a harmonic oscillator with a little spring and a weight, we just had the students jump off of a 40-foot trapeze wearing bungee cords and took data. This was really the birth of the Playful Learning Lab because I noticed something. We actually crammed a lot more material into the class than we were supposed to, and the students worked really long hours. But I'd come in on the weekends and they'd be laughing and showing video of themselves in the trapeze and coming up with cool circus acts they could do with the physics. And it was the eureka moment, right? It's actually the first principle of play. We're gonna go through 4 principles of play. And we realized those smiles were the first principle. There was joy. And so now in every class I teach, consulting project I do, research effort I take on, we look for joy. How do we get those smiles? Well, the next thing that we did after the circus lab was I had young children at the time, and I was very interested in the maker movement. And I love seeing people sewing circuitry and painting circuitry, but we wanted to come up with something that little kids could use. Preferably something that was safe and playful and joyful. And so we spent an entire summer making lots and lots of Play-Doh. And if you've ever made homemade sculpting dough, you probably know it uses a lot of salt and flour and water. And it turns out that salty water makes for a really good conductor. And thus we could then sculpt circuits that conducted electricity. And in fact, if we swapped out the salt and the tap water for sugar and distilled water, we could build insulators. And this was the birth of squishy circuits. Now, squishy circuits, again, what this looks like, I'll turn off the sound and talk you through it. My students went on to then start a company. But what this then looks like, right, is, start this playing, we can take our conductive dough and we can take our battery pack and plug in the conductive dough, turn on the battery pack, and then use an LED to bridge it. But of course, if the Play-Doh bumps into each other, we're going to have a short circuit. So this is where that insulating dough comes in. If we plug in that sugary dough in between, we have an insulated circuit. And this led to a lot of playful interventions. We had kids playing with these all the time. We also then, since there are many musicians in the lab, started thinking about, hey, is there a way that we could create some sound out of this? I'll show you a little demo. As you can imagine, as you stretch a circuit that is made of Play-Doh, you can change the resistivity and map that to pitch. And we had a lot of fun. Hear that little harmony sound. We had a lot of fun playing with different ways to make sound with the Play-Doh. Maybe not the most pleasant sounds, but this was our second principle of play. We knew that there was some joy here, but we started seeing people making silly sculptures and pumpkins, and we had biologists making neurons. We realized that we'd run into our second element of play. And our second element of play is whimsy. If you think of an ice cream cone as joy, whimsy is an ice cream cone that is brightly colored with candy floss and sprinkles on it. How can we go a little above and beyond? Well, in all of these examples, we've done work with chefs, we've done work with preschoolers, circus performers, dance troupes. All of these projects have involved other people. And that is the element that I really want to spend a lot of time with you all today talking about, is this idea of playing with others. So the third element of play, after joy and whimsy for us, is new people. What people can we bring into our projects? And my quintessential example for this actually involves musicians reaching out to us. In Minnesota, we have an amazing professional a cappella group called Contus. And Contus reached out to me in my lab and asked us if we could get together and if we could chat about a collaboration. And I suspect many of you out there, particularly academics, have heard a lot about collaboration, and we talk a lot about collaboration. But in my experience, particularly in robotics, I found that when we academics talked about collaboration, what we often meant was that we needed a certain piece of equipment or a certain algorithm or a piece of software that someone else has, and we're going to use that, and that's a collaboration. We use a different model. In the Playful Learning Lab, for us, collaboration is co-creation. So we don't want you to tell us exactly what you want us to do, and we're not going to give you an answer right away. Instead, we want to meet new people, sit down with them, share our toys, look at their toys, and come up with a project together, co-creation. So when Contus reached out to me and said, can we do something with music? I said, great. And so we met for coffee, because I love coffee, but I also got to the coffee shop a little bit early and wired up all of their coffee spoons to my computer so that when they tried to make their coffee, they all made a whole bunch of different sounds. It was a great icebreaker. And what we ended up coming up with was that the band really wanted us to do something for their live performances that would appeal to a younger audience. And so my team, ironically, it was a team of all women coders, and Contus is an all-male group. They decided they wanted to visualize sound. And they wrote their own music visualization software we call Code and Chords. It is entirely open source. I'll share it on the Slack channel, all the links. But what they did was map pitch, volume, vowel sounds to a GUI that allowed them to pick color or shape or pictures. This is Contus playing around with it. And the really amazing thing is their first performance they did was 4 weeks after that first meeting. I'll just show you a little bit of what this looks like. This is about 5 years ago.
Row, row, row
Their
your
first
boat
test of a route.
gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
So there's my engineering students and computer science students testing their code, and each of those rings represents one of the singers, and you can see what pitch they're singing. We could do a lot of fun things with this. This is one of our campus a cappella groups. And the colors match, we know they're all in the same pitch. We can tell who's loudest. We can start playing around with shapes. And it lets us start thinking of music visually. Now, as we started working with local musicians in the Twin Cities, we started realizing some of the things that we hadn't thought about. If you're working with one style of music, maybe you haven't run into a lot of vibrato. This is a demo that my students were doing. You can see the GUI interface here a little bit, where they were trying to smooth out the visual response to vibrato when they're prepping for some opera singers.
Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by?
And the students could then go in and pick how sensitive things are to attack or to release or to pitch variations. I want to end with one more image here. This one's sort of fun. This is 3 opera singers singing about colors. And since we have full control over what pitch maps to what color, you'll see some matching here. We love this idea of singing a rainbow. And as I mentioned, we never quite know where our projects are going in the Playful Learning Lab because we do go into it fully thinking co-creation and bringing this to communities and having them help us figure out what should be done with this. Actually, Code and Chords, I think about 6 years ago, we did a workshop at NIME and learned a lot from folks there. One of the projects near and dear to my heart in the Playful Learning Lab is for the last 8 years, we have been working with deaf and hard of hearing children. I'm teaching engineering and art classes. And we had the chance with the US public broadcast, PBS, the television show Psy Girls, to do an episode on our music coding software. And we actually decided in discussions that we wanted the students involved to be our friends at the Schools for the Deaf. So actually I want to show you a 2-minute snapshot of our experience teaching coding and particularly music visualization to deaf students who didn't have a coding background. These are some of our friends at Metro Deaf School. And here is a short snippet of Code Concert.
Welcome to our Coding Chords production. We've been working on this in collaboration with the University of St. Thomas students. It's critical that deaf people have the benefit of visual aids to understand music better, putting us on the same page as our hearing peers. Thank you for coming. We hope you enjoy the show. And now we'd like to call to the stage the Cadenza Singers.
Through our project, I feel like we were able to express ourselves to a larger audience, allowing our audience to understand that deaf people can create things along with music as a way to communicate.
I feel like I'm ready for anything. I could teach my family, other people, and generations to come who have never done anything like this. So I see this being passed on.
A lot of deaf people feel like they aren't able to appreciate music or have a relationship with music without sound. But this shows that you can.
I hope that they see like, oh, I could do this too. And that they would be able to discover the relationship between music and code.
I love that example because honestly, I never really know where the projects that I take on and that my amazing students take on are going to go. We really believe in co-creation, and in that case, it was our friends. At Metro Deaf School who helped us with that, and they really came up with that idea and helped us push it further. Which leads me to another unexpected experiment in musical expression. This is pastry chef Kate Sigel. Kate is a dear friend of the labs and has worked with us on some custom sugar creations. And whenever I would travel wherever she was, we'd get together after whatever work we were doing and play. And I mentioned the recipe for squishy circuits includes sugar and salt and flour. And Kate pointed out that that sounds an awful lot like a pastry recipe. And so Kate and I spent a while messing around with different icings that would have different conductivity. And this was really just a project for fun that we do whenever we happen to be in the same city. But then I got invited to Denmark to give a talk at the Factory of Imagination. And it turns out that it was one of the participants' birthday, this little guy. So in this audience, this always seems like magic to folks, but at NIME, you guys will figure this out quickly. But I want to show you one of the props we had at this conference.
Which cupcake would you like? Can you reach and grab a cupcake? Pick a cupcake. Wait. What did you do to my cupcake? Put it back. It doesn't play music for me. All right, try a different one. Poke it.
I went on to conduct him in his poking of the cupcakes, and he played Happy Birthday to himself, and then ate the cupcakes. How did it work? Well, I'm guessing many of you out there, and if I could see all of you, I'd ask you to guess, right? Why didn't it play music for me, but it did for him? And you might notice that he's holding a balloon and I'm not. And that balloon has a silver string. So I've grounded him to that circuit and mapped the cupcakes to different pitches. I couldn't really justify bringing a pastry chef from the United States to Denmark just for the cupcakes, even though they were delicious. So we decided we had to take on another project. Now, keep in mind, I told you there were 4 elements of play, and we've talked about joy and whimsy and new people. But this is where the 4th element comes in. As a team, I really believe that play and creation has to come from all of us. And as a leader, I have to step back occasionally and let them do their thing. So I brought in this team, a pretty amazing team of machinists and coders and circus performers and pastry chefs. And I told them I needed an epic cake to justify bringing Kate with me to Denmark. And I wanted that cake to respond to some people. And they had a lot of fun. These are their ideas. At one point, they recommended me traveling with lasers, but given that I work with Play-Doh and wires, I already have enough trouble with the TSA when I travel. I wasn't going to fly with wires and lasers. But they came up with a pretty special cake. And this is the cake. And it's lighting up. And when you push buttons, it makes sound. And that bright glowy thing is actually a sugar sphere that has lights moving under it. But my favorite part about this cake wasn't actually the music, even though it played music. It was this. On the right here, you can see the two conference organizers. And what they didn't realize was that the cake was going to explode edible confetti. And if you look closely at their faces on the right, I hope you see the next element of play, right? It's surprise. And it's one of my favorite elements of play, whether I'm writing a test, writing a lecture, creating a book, or creating an experience for theater. I want to find a way to add an element of surprise. And for us, it might involve international pastry travel, or it might involve unusual collaborations. But sometimes it's simpler. Sometimes it's a change of mindset. This is my favorite surprise. I have a pretty heavy teaching load. I teach about 8 courses a year, and I always make sure that at least half of those courses are first semester engineering students. And I make them do a design project, but I don't tell them what the project's going to be until the day we launch the project partway through the semester. And on that day, there might be a school bus there for them to hop into. And even better, hopefully that school bus is already full of preschoolers. And for many years, whenever I would give a design challenge to my college students, I would give the same challenge to our local preschoolers. Because you can learn a lot about creativity and play from the experts who are often 4 or 5 years old. So I just walked you through our elements of play. And I can't really call these the elements of play because people are still writing papers on what is play. So let's just call this the elements of play according to the Playful Learning Lab. We need joy, we need whimsy, we need to play with new people, we need surprise. Now, there's an interesting quirk about the word play, though. We use it in many ways in the English language and actually in many other languages. And I'd love to hear from some of you in Shanghai about how this maps in Chinese. Right? Because for us, when we talk about what makes something playful, it's about the process and the exploration. It's not the final result, right? Think about little kids playing with Play-Doh or telling stories or playing house. But we use that word play in many ways. We might say you play soccer, or you're acting in a play as a thespian, or you play music, or you play make-believe, or you play chess. Now, if play is about process and not the final result, are all of these things playful? And I would argue that soccer usually is about the final result, right? We have rules that we're following. So maybe it's not the most playful. It's still valid and I love soccer, but if we're truly looking at something being playful and about process and joy and whimsy and surprise and new people, maybe not. And if we're not talking improv, if we're talking someone giving me the script, well, maybe acting in a play isn't all that playful. I'm going to come back to music because we're at NIME. Make believe, well, let's see, playing chess. I would say playing chess, you have your set moves. You can't really break those, and we're trying to win. We want a checkmate at the end. I wouldn't say that most chess games are playful. Make believe, I would say, because when you're playing make believe, right, or you're messing around with paints, you're not really caring about the end result as much about the process and the exploration. So that leaves playing music. And I was classically trained as a pianist and then studied music composition for college. And I still have, I can actually see my piano from here. But when we play music, we often are playing notes that someone gave to us, and we're practicing the same things over and over. Now, when we work in collaboration and in ensembles, we may find some new experiences. But in those examples, and of course there are counterexamples, and we can talk about improv and more. But an interesting thing here when we look at these is to look at, is play, when we play music, is it about process or is it about the final result? And if we use the Playful Learning Lab's context of play, joy and whimsy and new people and surprise, maybe many music classes, particularly the way they're taught in the United States, and I'm incredibly fortunate that my co-director at the Playful Learning Lab is a professor of music education, Doug Orzalik, who is one of my heroes for playfully teaching music. And what we realized in our work is that sometimes there isn't a lot of playfulness in music education. And at the Playful Learning Lab, we'd love to find ways to bring these elements of playfulness and exploration into this phrase of playing music. Now, I'm pretty lucky, and as are all of us in the lab, because we've got a pretty incredible set of collaborators, chefs, preschoolers, circus performers, artists. But a few years ago, in 2017, I was at a conference and I drank way too much coffee. So I was grabbing one last cup of coffee before leaving the conference, and I ran into one of the conference speakers, Damian Kulash. Damian is the lead singer of OK Go. Many of you, some of you, may know OK Go from their elaborate music videos. OK Go has danced on treadmills, built chain reaction machines that last 4 minutes, flown in microgravity planes, flying parabolas so they can appear weightless. And I mentioned to the band that I use their music videos in my teaching. And so we decided on the spot that we should create a project together. And this is how OK Go Sandbox was born. To quote Damian, we wanted to give teachers whatever tools they needed to connect the joy, wonder, and fun in OK Go's music videos to the underlying concepts that their students are learning. And we, of course, believe in co-creation. So all of our work at OK Go Sandbox has been done in close collaboration with teachers. These are actually 2 teachers meeting with Damian and I the first time we were filming. Every time we film with OK Go Sandbox, we have an educator on set, a K-12 educator. And we've actually now made, I'm going to show you the website in a second, we've actually made over 30 videos specifically for classroom use. A lot of these deal with math and engineering and physics, but equally a lot of them deal with art and music. And I wanted to play you a short clip of one we did on sound.
You don't really think of a lot of things as musical instruments that make pretty cool sounds. I mean, like, everything's got a different sound. Silence is a cool sound.
There's a lot of good sounds in this room. You guys want to find them?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. That crinkle is kind of nice.
I like that. It's kind of a grainy sound.
It is.
Now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Got more bottom end boots. It is a song.
Hopefully that gives you a taste of the approach we take for these. I want to show you the website for OK Go Sandbox and encourage you to play around with it yourself. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to stop my share and I'll start a new share. Let me show you our OK Go Sandbox website. So this is the OK Go Sandbox site. And we have it set up, so it's okgosandbox.org. And we have it set up so you can go by music video, or you could filter by topic. We could say we're interested in music for kindergarten through 5th graders. And this will bring us to different videos that have been made for these. Hit the Note is a popular one. We explain how sound works, and we also show how in the band's video, This Too Shall Pass, they use a machine that plays cups. So let's watch a little clip of this.
We thought it'd be so cool if we could actually make the machine play parts of the song.
Then one of the engineers we worked with came up with the idea of playing tuned glasses for part of the song. Now, tuning the glasses to play the right notes was not as easy as it may sound. Sound consists of air molecules that are vibrating at various frequencies.
I'll skip through a bit since you guys are well versed on sound, but then they challenge kids to play their own tuned glasses. It gives them some notes to play. These are all mapped to educator guides and student guides and different standards, currently mapped to the US education standards, but we are in discussion to look at some other different ways of mapping the lessons. And there are about 25 to 30 of these lessons, right? So this one will walk through and show some of the science and vocabulary that is involved. All right, so I encourage you all to play around a little bit with the OK Go Sandbox site. And I want to give one more example of a project that I think ties in a lot of the things that I've heard over the last couple of days at NIME in terms of collaboration and the work that we can do even in these pandemic times. So we had always been creating materials for teachers to use in their classroom and occasionally doing live events, but we hadn't really found a way to invite the world to create music with OK until the pandemic hit. In March of 2020, the band released the song All Together Now that they filmed and put together in true OK Go style, but they did it quarantined in their own houses. We loved this video and challenged people to create their own art together but apart. And we thought that was enough of a prompt until last summer, we got an email from a music teacher in New York who asked if we could share the sheet music for this song. And so I had one of the research students in my lab write up sheet music for the song so their choir could do it. But we had thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could create our own version of the song that is crowdsourced from around the world? So we started planning this in late November, early December of 2020. And in January, last weekend of January, I was hosting a conference and I invited Damien and we announced this project to the world. And secretly, we were hoping we could get 2,500 people to help us out. That was January. By a month later, we left the sign-up sheet for a month. We had over 15,000 people that wanted to participate. We're never ones to say no. How many new people can we meet? This is perfect from a play perspective. So we had to figure out a way to create music videos with 15,000 people during a pandemic from all around the world. And what we decided to do, and I'm going to show you some snippets to close this, we decided to hire 4 very talented animators from around the world. We had a young woman in Germany and a young woman in New York and a young woman in California and an artist from Disney, also in California. And we asked them to create roughly 4-minute long animations at 12 frames per second that we could then print out into coloring sheets and mail around the world. And for people that maybe weren't getting mail in their countries, we were able to do it via the internet and have them then take pictures. But we mailed out over 10,000 coloring sheets and had people color them and send them back to us. Some people even sculpted theirs. Incredible creativity from around the world. Well, we thought we were just gonna play one song to go with this, but that didn't seem very OK Go Sandbox to us. If we were gonna make multiple music videos, we needed multiple songs. And what we had done was we invited people to sign up to submit music. And my incredible students and my collaborator, Doug Rosalik, and our music producer friend who we've been working with for years, Luke Tozier, put together a website that had some sheet music for the refrains, and then also track guides, and also the lyrics. And we invited the world to send us them playing any instrument they wanted, or tapping out the drum line, or even talking the lyrics in any language they wanted if they weren't really comfortable singing. We didn't know if we'd get anyone, but yet again, we did. We actually got over 400 signups for music. Oh, one of the videos was done in a praxinoscope, which is like a zoetrope. And the music was so good and so varied that we ended up making 5 completely different songs. I had to show this picture because you never know who you meet, how they'll be helpful years later. On the right here, this is a friend I met at camp when I was 10, which is funny because OK Go, 2 of their original members met at camp at 10. This is Luke Tozier, who's an incredible music producer and engineer. And Luke took all of these disparate pieces of music, from hurdy-gurdy to choirs to tap dancers. And this is his quote. He said that his job, after explaining what they wanted to the world, was just to sit back and listen. And we listened to every single piece we got sent to us. Once they did that, it was a puzzle. And Luke took these pieces in different ways and created these 5 unique songs. You can find them all on any music sharing platforms, but Spotify, for example. And I want to show you one. So I'm going to go back to our OK Go Sandbox website and show you what happens when you invite the world to create music with you. Well, first of all, you got to do the credits somehow. Oh, wait, let me make sure I'm sharing sound. Apologies. Okay. So this is the website on OK Go Sandbox. You can find all the videos and actually interviews with the animators. But you can also find the credits. And here are the participants for this project. I apologize, I'm scrolling rather quickly, but we could be here all night if I scrolled or read this list. Because as you'll notice, this list goes on forever. And these are just the people that were comfortable with us sharing their names, and the schools. So what happens when the world comes together to create music? Well, I'm going to show you one of the videos. I'm going to skip, it's so hard to pick a favorite. I don't have a favorite. There are ones, you can watch a documentary of how this is all put together. This one, if you like choirs and orchestras, you should definitely listen to the nature one. We have one that is electronic music, thanks to some students at Berklee College of Music who submitted pieces. But I'm going to play the one that we originally dreamt up. This is when we thought we were only making one music video. And so I'm going to end this part of my talk with a video.
And you guys ready?
And we'll start at the beginning so you can see the process. Let's hit play.
Andy, Tim, Dan, you guys ready?
Yep.
Yep. All right. And you're rolling, Maggie?
Yep.
You guys gonna actually do the pages now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. In the first few weeks of the pandemic, OK Go wrote and recorded a song together, alone in our homes.
A few months later, a high school choir from Long Island asked for the sheet music so they could collaborate from their homes the same way.
We loved that idea and invited the world to join.
The video you're about to see is one of 6 new pieces made by more than 15,000 musicians, artists, and students from 35 states and 21 countries.
Everything's untouched, but forever changed. Everything's untouched, but forever changed. Everything's untouched, but forever changed.
They look so different now. And all those harmonies we sang yesterday all sound so different somehow. Though they're all still the same. Every single soul, everyone there is all together now. And everyone alone, all together on the precipice. All that mattered then, all that matters now, all that matters after the world shuts down. All of it dissolved all together in a chrysalis. Together in a chrysalis. Nothing changes until one day it does.
I will admit that that was probably the hardest project we've ever done. That was all done in about 12 weeks. And we thought it was one music video, and it ended up being 6, and we have no regrets for doing 6 music videos. I have to admit, it was probably one of the greatest honors of my life, too, that during such a difficult time in a pandemic, we were able to use art and music to pull together hundreds of schools and people from around the world. I think that will always be a high point of my career. Before I end, I want to point out that our lab, again, all the work you've seen, all the papers we write, they're written by undergraduates. I am incredibly fortunate to work with young folks from a variety of majors who honestly have more energy, creativity, and skill than I will ever have, and they're half my age. But we actually take very seriously the lab rules. And maybe for a lab that believes in playfulness, it's not surprising that there are probably rules that you had as a child. The first is to be kind, and we take that very, very seriously. I'll skip to the third. It's to clean up your messes, because every project we do, I didn't even have time to go into our project of launching kids' art in space. We know we're not going to get them right every time. In fact, we make a lot of mistakes. And cleaning up your messes, yeah, it's literally cleaning the paint off the walls when something goes wrong, but it's also figuring out how to make things up to our collaborators, or how to apologize, and how to move on when things don't go the way we want them to, or when feelings get hurt. That second rule, though, that's the one that NIME's theme just ties into so nicely, that playing well with others, right? For us, play is about playfulness. It's about being in the moment and collaborating and searching creatively together, not knowing where we're going. It's about joy and whimsy, surprise, and new people. But with others, and really, how can we use the work that we do to bring others in? So I'm going to leave on that and take some questions. But again, I want to just say that this work couldn't be done without Ragad and Rahaf and Maria and Colin and Christina and everybody you see here. They all bring their own unique perspectives to the work that we do. We also, for a lab that loves meeting new people, we really do invite you all to reach out. I know some of you might be watching this later since it's the middle of the evening. I don't think we have a formal replay for this. But if you would like to reach out, I am happy to chat with you later. I just saw the note that you lost my volume. I hope my volume came back, hopefully. But with that, I'm going to end and open this up for questions. Oh, and I can even start. So yes. Margaret, while you're looking, I can start, but there's one already from Santiago Renteria, which is from a systemic perspective. How can play be encouraged in academia and education in a world obsessed with productivity and its measurement? Yeah, that's a hard one. I sympathize, and I'll be honest. As a professor, right, our metrics of what publications are you doing, they aren't always tied with the rules of playfulness or the attributes of playfulness. Similarly, in our K-12 education system, how do we grade something, right? If it's very playful. Actually, this morning I was on a panel globally, and we were discussing the future of education after COVID and what our students are really going to need, particularly K-12 students who are coming off of a lot of trauma. And I think, Santiago, you hit on the challenge here. We have to say this is important, and we believe in this. And there are outcomes we can look at. There are measures. There are ways we can see how kids are using this information and how adults are using this information or building new things. But you're right, playfulness can't be tested by a check the box multiple choice. And so we are really going to have to look at ways to reassess what our goals are. And if productivity is the goal, that's a challenge. When I work with companies and we talk about playfulness being a process, well, we care about that endpoint. So you have to create space where it's okay to do projects where you don't know if you're going to have a final product at the end. And that's going to take a lot of change. But I think we're seeing companies willing to do things differently, particularly after this past year. Great question. Thank you.
We have a question coming in from our collaborator here, Alex Ruthman, saying you've been really successful at establishing project collaborations across your campus and with external groups. So what do you look for in selecting collaborators, and what makes a successful collaboration, especially from the point of view of your undergraduates, your students?
Fantastic question, Alex. First of all, people always ask, how do you get to work with all these people? And the answer from our lab is always, we ask them. So I will say I have a personal practice that I've been doing for years now, which is every year at the end of the year in December, I ask who my dream collaborators would be, and I have to come up with at least one or two. And then I send an email to those folks, even if I don't know them. Usually I don't know them. Usually I don't even hear back. But every year I put that out into the world. Like, this is someone I'd really like to get together with. Now, when we do projects, though, we really do try to stay true to our idea of not finding a partner where we already know the end goal, that we really believe in co-creation. So we look for people that will follow our 3 rules, even though they seem simple. Like, are these people we want to spend time with? And then will it help the goals of K-12 education? Our lab is focused heavily on K-12, and so we have to see some way that us coming together with these collaborators could do something great for K-12. And then for me as a professor, the second is, does it provide once-in-a-lifetime opportunities for the young adults that I work with? But collaboration, and those are my undergrads, collaboration, we've learned, we really have to find people who are equally passionate about what they do, and we have to be willing to step back and not drive the project, but co-create. And that can be really, really messy, and it hasn't always gone well. I'm lucky that now in my 40s, after decades of working this way, we've kind of learned early on to set your boundaries and to make sure that everyone agrees that we're following a playful process where we might not have something fantastic at the end. Surprisingly, we often do. But if we are all committed to this idea of, this is the space we want to explore, and you're bringing your gifts and we're bringing our skills and ideas, and we're going to have this amount of time and we're going to see where it goes. And if it doesn't work at the end, maybe we'll separate. And we have to be willing to do that, which is terrifying if you're pre-tenure. It's terrifying if you are on grants. But I've learned as I get older that staying true to your values and what you are hoping to get out of the projects, particularly if you're transparent with everyone, including your funders and maybe your university, it's a much more meaningful, it's a project I want to be involved with. I only want to do projects with people where I feel like we're going to bring some joy and helpfulness to the world, and that they're people that we will like spending time with. Great question.
AnnMarie, speaking of the wide world and following on some of the projects in your talk, we have a question from Daniel Chin. And Daniel Chin is actually right here in the room, so I'm going to ask him if he wants to speak his question.
Hey, thank you. I might not be capturing the video, but my question is, so you must be, first of all, thank you for the great talk, Professor AnnMarie Thomas. You must be familiar with about the open source code revolution that has dominated the dev world. So listening to your talk makes me think of the possibilities of open source art for massively distributed collaborations. So this concept is probably not new to you, but I wonder what's your thoughts on that. Thank you.
It's a great question. I'm laughing because it's been kind of at the core. I come out of the maker world, right? And so I spent a lot of time with folks who are and also the open source software world. And yes, the idea of open source, it goes against a lot of things, right, that we're taught in engineering school. But on the other hand, I think it really is, for education, I think it's a necessity. And so the projects that I share, you can find all the stuff for Code and Chords on GitHub. Squishy Circuits, we never intended that to be a company. We came up with an idea, we shared all the recipes online. I gave a talk and it kind of took off. And I was actually, one of my students came up to me and said, AnnMarie, like, I love that we're sharing things, but like my mom's a teacher and she doesn't want to have to solder the clips onto the end of the battery packs. Like, we really should start a company. And so actually that student, I gave the IP to my students, he has a company. And he pointed out to me that just because I share everything online, not everyone wants to do the steps. So I love that we still share all the recipes and instructions, but Squishy Circuits, that student started that company. Our dear friends, honestly, are some of the guys who invented Makey Makey, Eric Rosenbaum and Jay Silver, who I've seen some of their work mentioned in some talks here and papers that folks have written. Makey Makey is open source and was really what we modeled a lot of our hardware development in the lab on. I take great pride in the fact that I also teach in engineering education, and we were like the earliest beta testers for Makey Makey. The Makey Makey team sent us to MIT their boards and we tested them with teachers. And that was revolutionary to me. That was the first time I'd heard of open source hardware. And the idea of really just putting the stuff out there so we can share and we can build off it. It's a privilege to be able to do that. And as academics, we often can. I will say that not all of academia, if you're going that route, and I've had a couple people ask questions about doing this as a professor, universities need a little bit of schooling in what it means for things to be open source and for those to count as publications. I did spend a lot of time talking with our legal counsel at times because I wanted everything the lab creates to be open source and not necessarily something that went through the normal publication circles. I personally spend a lot of my time looking at GitHub and looking at Open Source Hardware Summit and other places where people are sharing, and it's really exciting. I mean, I think we know that we're in for, as always, all of humanity has always had struggles, and we can say that we have challenges ahead of us, but there's always been challenges. And I think we've seen the greatest solutions come to challenges when people were sharing what they were doing. So Daniel, it's a great question, and I really do hope that we see some more of this open source in the art world. And I think we do have some great examples of that. I mean, processing is incredible, right? The open source hardware movement. But I do hope that the next generation of artists and developers is also sharing what they build. Thank you.
AnnMarie, I have a question coming in. What do you see the circus arts really intriguing? What do you see next for your collaborations in that area, and have your students doing new things?
Yeah, okay, so circus is a project near and dear to my heart. Unfortunately, it turns out the flying trapeze is a really high contact sport. So COVID-19 obviously put a bit of a crimp into our work. Actually, the last trip that my students went on was in February 2020. Two of my students were in Australia presenting at TEI on our circus work. I want to show a picture. It isn't in this talk. Maybe while I'm talking, I'll find it. We've been looking a lot, prior to COVID, we were looking a lot at how we could put sensors on circus performers so that we could visualize their swing. Because on flying trapeze, how you get height is by modifying your swing. And what we found is that the swings of professional circus performers tend to be quite different than novices. And there's not a ton of scholarly work on flying trapeze form. I think it's opening. I want to show you a beautiful picture. It's a slow motion test of putting LEDs on the suit of a circus performer, and then taking a long exposure picture of her swing. And the color of the LEDs changes based on whether she is kicking forward or backwards. And you can then see in this picture, I hope I did it. Give me a second, I'll just see if I've got a picture here. There it is, okay. The irony is this was designed by a freshman, and this was actually the first test of his piece, and we got a picture like this, right? And you can see where there's blue or there's red, that's where she changed the direction she was kicking in. And so we're working with this team actually as things are starting to open up a little bit more here in the US. I feel a little more comfortable with the amount of contact we need for flying trapeze. We're looking at augmenting their costumes. I have to say there were some amazing NIME papers. I was speaking to a student, I believe, from Canada who's doing haptics and sensors, and lots of ideas to bring back to my students from that. I'll also say that the student who works on the circus work is also a professional magician. So as we start being together in the same spaces, there's a lot more discussion in our lab about the worlds of magic and the worlds of circus, and maybe the worlds of sound and how they tie in with magic and circus. So that's a teaser for hopefully what's coming in the next year.
Thank you.
I've got my spoiler here.
And I think we have time for a question, if there's a question in the room.
Yeah, I'll ask a question here, AnnMarie.
We have a question from Gus.
Yeah, great to see you here. So, so amazing that you have been working with, both adults, college students and little kids. So through your experience, do you see any significant difference between kids and adults on how they perceive how to play music and how music is related to other modalities, say color and haptic? Thanks.
Oh, that's a great question, Gus. So two things. I'll say to the colors. One thing I should mention, if any of you have done any research in synesthesia, I'll just say the colors is a fascinating thing with code and chords. Is anyone who's a synesthete doesn't like our code and chords work because our colors don't usually map to their colors. Okay, that was an aside. Kids and adults, how do they handle this stuff differently? truly, kids are usually, not always, but kids are usually more willing to dive in and try things without fully understanding what they're doing. And that's a joy. When I showed you that picture of a bus where I would take college students and preschoolers to the same place and give them the same challenge, somewhat embarrassingly for the college students, I would make the preschoolers also give final presentations, and maybe they didn't do CAD models, but they did really nice cardboard drawings. And often our clients would say that they got better ideas from the preschoolers than from the college students, which probably reflects a failure on my part as the professor of the college students. But I think it's a little bit deeper. I think that when you see things through the eyes of a child, and it's I want to be very careful to say that we want to look at childlike wonder, not childish. Childish is usually pejorative, but childlike, through the eyes of a child, that sense of wonder, they haven't been told what they can't do. I mean, honestly, it's why I love working with undergraduates. They haven't realized what's expected of a normal undergraduate, so they can do anything. And we see the same thing when we bring preschoolers into our space. They see things differently than people who've already been taught what to expect or what to see in a classroom, or what to expect or what to see or what to hear at a concert. Right? If I take music students in college to a concert, they're going to focus on the performers and what they hear. But on the other hand, if I take a bunch of little kids who've never been to a concert before, how do they know that the sound from the light fixture is less important than what's on stage? And they hear things very differently. It's honestly why one of the joys is working with OK Go. When OK Go is playing and banging on things, they're very professional and they're very, very serious and intense in their work. But you saw in that surrounding sounds that they brought a bit of childlike wonder to seeing a classroom and turning it into an instrument. And so I think all of us can aspire to emulate that sense of childlike wonder and curiosity, and try not to bring in all of our preconceived notions on, a coffee spoon shouldn't play music. Well, why not? A circus performer shouldn't light up. Well, why not? And so I do think that working with kids, and especially bringing young kids into our research team and our lab as a partner, is important because honestly, they're often much more creative than us because they just haven't been told what's normal or what's expected. Great question. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And I'll, again, appreciate AnnMarie's coming to us worldwide and here on campus. Thank you so much. Thank you to all you here.
Thank you.